welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. We're very excited this week to be joined by Republican candidate for governor and former Navy SEAL, Eric Greitens. Sir, welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Great to be on with you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
I want to start, you have a very different background than most folks running for governor. Give us a little insight into your background and how it brought you to today.
Sure. So I'm a Navy SEAL. I'm a businessman. I'm a conservative outsider. I'm also a very proud husband and father. As a Navy SEAL, I did 4 deployments in the global war on terrorism. I served in Afghanistan in 2003, Southeast Asia in 2004. I was in the Horn of Africa in 2005. And I was in Iraq in 2006, 2007. Now, when I was in Iraq, I was serving as the commander of an al-Qaeda targeting cell. So, Scott, my unit's job was to capture mid to senior level al-Qaeda leaders in and around the city of Fallujah, Iraq. March 28, 2007, we'd been on an operation till about 2 or 3 o'clock that morning. And at 6 o'clock that morning, we came under what we call a complex attack. Mortar rounds came in, small arms fire, and then my team was hit by a suicide truck bomb. Now, I was very fortunate. I was taken to the Fallujah Surgical Hospital. I was treated there. I was able to return to full duty 72 hours later. But a lot of my friends were hurt far worse than I was. And when I came home, I went to Bethesda to the Naval Hospital to visit with them. I know you've done this. You walk into one of those hospital rooms and you're talking with very young men and women, 19, 20, 21 years old. And I asked all of them, I said, hey, tell me, what do you want to do when you recover? And they all said to me, I want to return to my unit. These men and women were still what they had always been. They were fighters, right, who'd taken on al-Qaeda, who'd volunteered for our hardest and most dangerous missions. But what I saw, Scott, is that when they came home, many of them were being broken and mistreated by their own government. You know, the VA is now one of the largest bureaucracies in the country. We spent over $160 billion on it last year. It has over 325,000 full-time employees. And what the VA was saying to my friends...
Was it the medical care, or was it helping them transition into a different life?
It's helping them to transition into a different life. And it's a great question, because a lot of times the medical care in the Department of Defense, when they first come back and they're in the Department of Defense, that medical care was still really good. As they transfer into the VA system and they're handed off to this government bureaucracy, what happens is that the VA will say, they'll say, Scott, if you are 60% disabled, they'll say, we will pay you as if you're 100% disabled as long as you don't work.
And it sounds like there's some good intention there, but the outcome isn't optimum.
The incentives are all aligned in the wrong direction. So that what happens is you get once really proud and productive people, and they're handed disability money and drugs and excuses, and they're told to accept the fact that they should think of themselves as disabled and a burden for the rest of their lives.
So your work with those veterans seems very rewarding.
Yeah.
Why are you running for governor?
So I'm running for governor because I love this state. You know, I was born and raised here. I grew up in Missouri, and when I grew up here, I was proud to be from Missouri. So it was where great exploration started, where great missions were begun, right? And we had Fortune 500 companies, we had strong entrepreneurs, we had great communities rooted in clear values, and I got a great education from some excellent coaches and teachers and mentors.
Here in Missouri?
Right here in Missouri.
Where from?
So right from St. Louis, outside of St. Louis, Parkway North High School is where I went. Great education, and what happened was, I think we've all seen over the course of the last generation that career politicians, special interest insiders, well-paid lobbyists, corrupt consultants have been running this state into the ground. Over the course of the last decade, Missouri is 47th in GDP growth. We're 42nd in job growth, 43rd in wage growth. Right now in our public schools, only 1 in 4 of our 4th graders are reading at grade level. But I know, Scott, I know that with conservative leadership, we can turn Missouri around. And we can build a Missouri that I'm proud to pass on to my son.
Well, let's talk about the issues that...
Yes.
This may be the only show where we drilled in on these 3 topics.
Absolutely.
But let's talk 3 Republican red meat issues, gun tax and abortion. Where are you on the issue of the pro-life movement?
So I'm pro-life, and I'm strongly pro-life. I believe that we have to promote life. I believe that we have to defend life. I also believe, Scott, that in a free society, no person should have their tax money taken from them and spent on organizations like Planned Parenthood, that you saw the videos, Sheena and I saw the videos. The activities that they engage in are barbaric.
And that includes down to stem cell research.
Yes, and I'm pro-life. I'm opposed to embryonic stem cell research. I think that we need to engage in research that will make sure that we develop life-saving cures for all of these problems and diseases that are affecting all of our friends, neighbors, and families. But I'm opposed to embryonic stem cell research that would actually destroy life.
Let's talk guns. You've shot bigger guns than most people have seen.
Yes.
Walk us, in a society, though, there is a point where you can have, where it makes sense to have some guns limited from general public ownership. Where's that line at to you?
Yeah, so for me, it's important. I am a Navy SEAL, and I'm also a lifetime member of the NRA. And I believe that it's very important that law-abiding citizens they do have the right to keep and bear arms. And we need to protect that right here in Missouri and around the country.
So you're for pushing that line way liberally as far as what firearms are included and should be owned by a private citizen.
Yeah, I think that private citizens have the right to keep and to bear arms, and I think that, you know, we have laws on the books that need to be enforced.
Let's talk about taxes. Now,
yes.
I hear a lot of folks talk about cutting taxes. They don't talk so much about cutting government. I'm just a simple hillbilly from West Butler County. But I just don't think a guy gets his paycheck on Friday and says, you know, I didn't send enough money to Jeff City. All these wonderful things they're doing for me, I didn't get him enough money.
Yes.
Would you cut taxes under your administration?
Yeah.
Will taxes be lower on Missourians?
Yeah. Yes, we want to reduce taxes on working families. And what we have to do in Missouri is we got to recognize the problem. And in Missouri, we've got two big problems. First is the tax code is rigged for special interest insiders. All of the tax credits that are given away, the money that's given away, the Nixon administration can't not even account for how much money is given away in special interest tax credit programs. So one of the first things that we have to do is to reform the tax code to make sure that it is clear so that people understand it, so that it actually works for working families and for people who are running businesses. The second problem—
But all that does is add more money to the— I mean, those tax credit programs were signed into law by President Reagan and Governor John Ashcroft. They actually keep money out of government. Every dollar that goes to a tax credit doesn't go to some cubicle for people to harass business owners. What do you, can you look people in the eye and say, your service to the state's no longer needed, we just can't afford you?
Well, one of the things that we have to do, first of all, in Missouri, and this gets to exactly the second problem, is that in Missouri we've got a $26.9 billion budget. And when you look through that budget, Scott, there are no metrics. There is no way for the people of Missouri to tell if the money that they spend, if their tax money, actually leads to result. Now, conservative governors who've come in from the outside have been able to change this. I believe in results. I believe in accountability. Everything that I've done in my life as a leader, at the Mission Continues, running my own business, being a Navy SEAL, you held yourself accountable for results. And I believe that we should have a government where every agency of government should have a clear mission, and every line item in the budget should have a metric so that we can determine whether or not we actually created results for people. And just one more thing on this. We have to recognize this isn't something that's abstract, Scott. Right? Sometimes politicians talk about this and they talk about taxes and this and the budget. This affects real people. Right? In Missouri, we have 12,000 kids in the foster care system. Those kids deserve a government that is held accountable for the results that we create. Sure. Working families deserve to have a government that is held accountable. Politicians, career politicians, they often don't recognize that the things that they do can hurt real people. I've spent my life solving problems, helping people, serving people, and that's what the kind of ethic that we need to bring back to Jeff.
Let's talk about some of your career dealing in and around politics.
Sure.
You wrote an editorial, you were a Democrat.
Yes.
Walk us through that transition.
Sure. So I grew up, I was born and raised a Democrat. You know, I grew up right here in Missouri, and I grew up believing that Harry Truman was the greatest president who we'd ever had. And I loved when John F. Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. But over the course of my life, running my own business, seeing the way that the government bureaucracy was breaking my friends, shattering strong families, serving as a United States Navy SEAL, I became a conservative. And I'm a conservative who believes in the free enterprise system, who believes in limited government, who, as we talked about, supports the Second Amendment, is pro-life.
You say these things passionately.
Yes.
You, a conservative outsider is the tagline. It's been a very effective one you've put on you.
Yes.
There was talk, you heard Barack Obama's nominating speech in Denver. You were in the crowd.
Yes.
Is that where that began?
Well, I was invited to Denver, and I went to Denver, and I listened. Just like when President Bush invited me to his farewell address, I went to his farewell address. Is that what made you a conservative? I would think if it didn't before, it would have been. No, actually, no. I'd been a conservative for a long time before that, but I do think it's important to listen to people. And I'm always willing to listen to people, but I'm a conservative outsider who's lived a life. I'm the only candidate in this race who's actually built an organization that solves tough problems. It's rooted in a conservative philosophy.
So folks have sought you to run for office before.
Yes.
They sought you out to run for Congress, a Democrat, whoever the establishment Democrat would be.
Yeah.
We talk about these issues, make a very compelling case. Were you the same pro-gun, pro-life, anti-Obamacare government guy when they were recruiting you then as you are today?
Yes. And when they asked me to run, I told them no. And I told them no because I'm a Republican and a conservative.
And so I guess the question I would have is on an issue like life.
Yes.
They were recruiting a pro-life Eric Greitens then, and that's part of the reason you didn't run.
They were recruiting me because of what I'd done. They were recruiting me because I was a Navy SEAL, because I'd served in Iraq, because I'd served in Southeast Asia, because I served in the Horn of Africa. And they came back and they asked me to run, and I told them no, I'm a Republican and a conservative.
So that takes us to this race you're actually in.
Yes.
Fundraising seems to be going well. You in the first quarter you were in the race, leapt to the front of the fundraising line.
Yeah.
That seems like you've got a base that's going to continue on. How is the fundraising going? Excuse me, and will you see is the grassroots matching the fundraising success?
Yeah. The fundraising is going great, but it's a manifestation of what's happening on the ground. Right? So on the ground, Scott, after we announced 2.5 weeks ago, we traveled to every corner of the state of Missouri. And the people who came out to support us, Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, business owners, doctors, nurses, police officers, grandparents, high school students, these were a lot of people who had never been involved in politics before, who came in because they know that we need strong conservative leadership to turn Missouri around. So yes, I'm very pleased with our fundraising. We're grateful to every single one of our supporters. We're also extraordinarily happy with the volunteers who are coming on board on this campaign, who are signing up right now, who are saying that we need to have strong, proven leadership to turn Missouri around.
Eric Greitens, thanks for so much for coming on, and we'll hopefully see you again as the campaign unfolds.
Absolutely. All right,
thanks
thanks
for being
Scott.
here.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
And we'll leave you this week with this week's leading economic indicators. We'll be right back with our opinion maker panel.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Back to This Week in Missouri Politics. We're now joined by our opinion maker panel, starting with Chief Democratic Operative in the state of Missouri, Jack Cardetti, makes things happen. Jane Dueker on her victory lap tour for a big minimum wage win, comes to This Week in Missouri Politics. Thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Aaron Willard, Republican operative, Chief of Staff to Senator Ryan Silvey, friend of the show. And the first time on the show, we've tried to get him on since we've had a show, Representative Jay Barnes from Jefferson City, Missouri. Representative, thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
Let's talk about the man you're supporting for governor, Eric Greitens. What did you think of the interview?
I thought it was great. It's the same message he's been spreading around this state. He's a conservative outsider. He has a real-world history of taking people in difficult situations and making sure that they're not going to live on government roles their whole life, but turning their life around. And I think there is a hunger amongst the Republican base for outsiders who've actually built things in their life, who have real-world experiences, and Eric has those types of experiences that I think
the story
are going to do
helping
very
the
well.
veterans is very compelling. I mean, it's very interesting to listen to, and it's, from all indications, not just talk. Those things, he's helped veterans improve their life. That's a very different case to be governor.
It's a case where real-world, hands-on experience of taking people who might have gone on welfare, who are facing very difficult times, and saying, look, there's a better way. You can build a life for yourself with your own effort. Everyone should go out and read his book, Resilience, about how to turn your life around and how to deal with struggles in your life, and I think he'd be a great leader for our state.
Aaron Willard, what are you hearing from the Republican base on this? I mean, he has hit the trail pretty hard, and he has changed the race.
Well, I think, I look at it a little different too. I know that he gets a little bit of heat. Sometimes they say it's background. But, I mean, for me personally, that story, it kind of falls flat. I mean, my parents have probably donated to campaigns that Jack and Jane have run. So I have come a family that has a split, kind of political lean. But, for me, coming over to the Republican side was more of a learned process. It was really, I didn't vote Republican because my parents were telling me to. I went out there and I actually started looking at the issues. I started studying these things, and I started, coming to my own conclusion, wait a minute, this is not the kind of things that I believe. So for me personally, I don't have a problem, and I really am drawn to the Eric Greitens story, not only because it's a great personal one, but because politically I understand it. But I think that, there's a lot more value in there sometimes for somebody who looks and understands the issues and then makes the decision, wait a minute. Sometimes changing course is a much harder decision than keep going forward.
I assume listening to Barack Obama's nominating speech would make anyone a Republican. It stuns me. Jack Cardetti, the interesting parts of the interview, obviously, he very polished, comes off well. He's ran himself a conservative outsider. He said that in 2010, the Democrats in Washington were recruiting a pro-life, pro-gun, anti-Obamacare candidate. That's the part of this. If there's a speed bump in his campaign, it's going to be handling those issues. How do you think he did?
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly much more comfortable talking about his own personal history than his history on the issues, because it gets very complicated at that point. I mean, this is somebody who tried to run in 2010 for the U.S. Senate as a Democrat. He later tried to run for Congress as a Democrat. I mean, this is somebody who literally, the very first time in this race that he got asked about a specific issue to take a stance, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he was for stem cell research. By 4:30, he was opposed to it. And again, in his past, it's somebody who supported reproductive rights, was for gun control. He has very tough time. So what's going to really trip him up here in a Republican primary is if not only his past issues are called into question, but if there are things about the charity and others that become that he's being less than truthful with about everybody. I think those could be a speed bump. And I just think it's something, he's set a very high bar that he's not a politician. He's always going to tell you the truth. If that comes under attack and he doesn't look as principled as he talks, I think that's going to be a big problem in this campaign.
Do you think people get in the Republican primary, do you think they get into the charity, or do they think they question, where have you been on these issues as short time ago as 2 cycles ago?
Or just where have you been? I mean, I think that's what's interesting here. That's what I think is fascinating about this campaign, because he does have a compelling story. I love hearing it. But you made an interesting comment when you said he's branded himself as an outsider conservative. Well, that's the point. He's branding himself. And it will be a fascinating experience in Missouri to see if you can come in and take over the helm of, a major political party, not having any experience, not having really any credentials. And is this, can you brand yourself, and does it work? And so I think that will be fascinating to see. He's incredible to listen to. I mean, the few times that I've heard him speak, I thought, well, he sounded like Obama, but he just put a different label on it. I mean, the life of service, he's a community organizer, and all the sort of things that were complained about with Obama seem similar. And so, I think that's going to be fascinating.
Even if that's true, his community was veterans, which may be a little more sympathetic to Republicans than
absolutely
organized. But
it's the same sort of level of experience that we were talking about. I think that's interesting.
Does the answer he gave on his transition from being at the convention in 2008 to being recruited by the Democrats in 2010 to running as a conservative outsider, did that transition, the answers he gave on that transition, will that sell in the Republican primary?
I think so, and I don't know the broader Republican primary. I know for me personally, it does. And I think it's ironic to question whether or not he's going to be able to pull it off. I mean, at the top of the ticket for the Democrats, you have someone who's elected as a Republican and is now running for Democrat.
Who dealt with all these questions in 2008?
So you know what? I mean, my answer, kind of back to Jack and Jane is, yeah, you can do it. I mean, it's been done. We've seen that history before. And as far as reaching out to the base and kind of what happens, You know, I look back a little bit. Remember in, I think it was 2006, we had the Tom Schweik, Alan Isett, you know, primary on the Republican side. Alan was perceived as somebody that said, hey, this is a grassroots guy, he's got great relationships among. Tom Schweik had come in, had a little bit of a history where they said, well, wait a minute, you know, haven't you donated to Claire McCaskill in the past? Haven't you done some of these things? We haven't seen you at a lot of these events. Tom Schweik went on to win, and he won re-election as auditor again and was unopposed. So, I mean, I think that there is some history of that, even in Missouri, and so absolutely, I mean, I was completely comfortable with the responses that Eric Greitens, you know, has given, and I think there's already precedent in Missouri for that path forward for
Jay
him.
Barnes, as a Greitens supporter, are you hearing these questions?
Sure, you hear these questions. I think there's a couple things to remember. The first is Ronald Reagan grew up a Democrat until he became the greatest conservative Republican president of the 20th century. That's the first thing. The second thing, Jane talked about where's he been for 10 years, where's the experience in government. I don't think Missouri voters are going to hold it against him that he was in Fallujah fighting ISIS, the precursors to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, rather than walking the marbled halls of the Capitol dealing with lobbyists all day. I think that's a
you know, but the
benefit
better
to
question,
have
the
not
different
dealt with
question may be to Republican activists. They were putting up, you know, John McCain, Sarah Palin signs, and he was listening to Barack Obama talk about bringing in a socialistic government. I mean, there is that portion. I agree. No one's going to question his service in the military. I just think that part of it is the part that it's got to be what people are questioning you about.
Well, and look at the life experience when he comes back and he's helping veterans, and he sees the VA that's there to help them. And how are they going to help them? Well, they're going to give them this government help. And they tell him, look, if you're disabled, if you're 60% disabled, we'll pay if you're 100 if you don't work.
Quick prediction: at the end of the day, does he explain that issue, and is he the Republican nominee?
I think it's hard because I think, you know, he's running out of time. I mean, Missourians don't move that quickly. So, I mean, he's really going to have to establish himself, and that's difficult. So, I mean, I think he's got enough money to get his message out. I think that matters huge. But I also think, you know, it's not a lot of time to, you know, ensconce yourself within a primary, and it's crowded.
Does he answer the questions? Is he the nominee?
I don't think so. I think if you look at what he's done in this first month in the race, he's really gotten tripped up on the issues. And at the end of the day, he's going to have to be able to talk about the issues. And so far, basically, he was a liberal Democrat, and it wasn't that long ago. He endorsed Mayor Slay just fairly recently. And now he's trying to brand himself to that Todd Aiken wing of the Republican Party here. And that's just not going to work. It's a minefield that will expose him as a candidate.
Jane Dueker, this is a part of your victory tour after your big win on the minimum wage lawsuit. Give us the cliff notes on what happened.
Well, I think the judge agreed. I represented a group of businesses, business associations, and we sued to have the local minimum wage ordinance passed in the city of St. Louis. We sued to have it declared invalid, and the judge agreed that it conflicted with state law. And so, you know, they've determined they're going to appeal, which I think is a shame. Because
where does the appeal go to?
It will likely go directly to the Missouri Supreme Court because there's constitutional questions.
What's the time frame on that?
I mean, it depends on how fast the city wants to, you know, pursue the appeal. I think it would be great if we could sort of restabilize the business community in the city of St. Louis and just sort of get back to that. And I think everyone agrees. To me, you know, the only thing worse than not raising the minimum wage is telling people you can when you can't. And so I would like, you know, us to refocus on the effort where we do this on a statewide basis. It always has been done that way. It needs to be done that way. And 77% of Missourians said yes to a minimum wage increase in 2006. We can do that again.
Jack, should they be able to raise the minimum wage?
Yeah, obviously, I hope the appeal is successful. I hope St. Louis City is able to raise the minimum wage locally, and I think other cities should. If not, then it really, the spotlight will be on Jeff City. I think it'd be smart of the Republican Party to actually get out in front of this issue for once. Go raise the wage down there, make sure people aren't making in the $7 range, raise that wage. It'll be good for the economy, and it's great politics. Because if not, this is an issue that's coming straight at Republicans, and it's a loser for them.
Representative Barnes, are you going to listen to Jack's advice to help you in Jeff City?
I don't think I'm going to listen to that advice. And, you know, the talk
I'm sure
about great
I'm sure
politics.
It's well-intentioned.
There are a lot of politicians who think they can wave a magic wand and suspend the rules of basic economic theory, that when you increase the price of something artificially, you're going to get less of that thing. And what we're talking about is labor. And increasing the minimum wage shuts people off of the first rung on the ladder to long-term economic stability. You look at Seattle, where they raised their minimum wage. That's a community, that's a city that is hemorrhaging restaurant jobs, which is the industry most affected by a minimum wage. Raising the minimum wage would be bad for St. Louis. It'd be bad for the state of Missouri. It'd be bad for the very people that folks like Jack want to help.
But Aaron Willard, is it going to end up being good politics to put this on, have all this publicity? Will Mayor Slay be responsible for a 1 or 2 point bump in Democratic turnout?
Well, I think that's tough to say. I mean, what I do know at this point, I mean, thanks to Jane's work, is Mayor Slay is going to be responsible. I think part of that decision was that the defendants had to pay the court costs too. So, you know, I mean, I don't know that that's helping the cause a whole lot. I mean, if they're going to continue to push it, if it's going to be a losing argument. Politically, I do think that, you know, it's probably a good issue, you know, and I think as has been pointed out, you know, there can be some traces back, you know, historically that it will help turnout. I think that's problematic, you know, for Republicans. I definitely don't want to see it, but we have a service-based economy, you know, overall, and when you know, Jay was talking about labor costs, if you're going to increase those costs, you know, I don't think that people have correlated through yet. I mean, this is going to come down directly into those costs, and it's going to have a real, you know, impact. So when we're going to the restaurant, or we're going to other places and things like that, those costs are going to rise too. A lot of people look at, you know, minimum wage and they associate it with the individual person, but really it's the businesses that are going to be the ones that are going to be impacted the most, because they're the ones, you know, that are issuing and paying those bills.
Quick take: does it go to the ballot and does it pass?
Goes to the ballot. I'm going to say it won't pass.
Goes to the ballot, does it pass?
You know, I have no idea if it goes to the ballot.
If it does, does it pass?
Won't pass if it does.
Jane,
If it goes to the ballot and it's not too unreasonable, I think it passes big.
Jack Cardetti?
2006, it passed in every single county in Missouri. If it goes back on the ballot, it'll pass easily. And Republicans will regret not getting that in front of it.
Close races, Democrats win. Mayor Slay owes a little text of thank you, right?
Absolutely. No, the mayor's done a great job here. So did the Board of Aldermen. And hopefully it leads the way for all of Missouri to get a raise.
Quick take: will the stadium developments have unfolded a little bit? We got a minute left. Will there be a stadium, yes or no?
Yeah, St. Louis is an NFL city, will remain an NFL city. What you see from the legislature right now is just a CYA move. They could have stopped this last year. That was the time to stop it. They didn't do it. They chose not to, and now it's going to go forward.
We'll try a yes or no with you, Jane. Stadium, no stadium.
I think we get it, yes.
Aaron Willard, does it happen?
You know, I'd love for football to be in St. Louis, but I don't want taxpayers to pay for the stadium.
The man that's filed the lawsuit to stop it, does it happen?
I hope there's a stadium in St. Louis. We want it to remain an NFL city. General Assembly doesn't support welfare for billionaires. The General Assembly will not fund a new stadium.
Can you
stop it?
The
current statute doesn't allow it as it is right now. There's no funding in the existing budget for it. There will be no funding in any future budget for it. And what the governor has done has to kick dirt on 30 years in elected office. The way he's gone about this has been embarrassing for our state. It's a third world style way that he's gone about trying to spend $1 billion, including $500 million of taxpayer money.
We hope as this process unfolds, you'll actually come back to talk to us about it. We'll try to fish an opinion out of you somehow.
All right. Thanks, guys.
And, we'll leave it right there for this week in Missouri Politics. We'll see you next week.